Good morning from North Carolina, the state vying with Texas for the title as most willing to go back to the Inquisition. I welcome you to reflect today why you're here. Why are you a UU? What should be the focus of the UUA? For some of you, you came because you were looking for a way to give your children a liberal education. Some of you came for the community. Some of you may have been seeking to be with more like-minded people, and while some of you may have been seeking intellectual stimulation. Religion has both functional aspects, such as building community, education, celebrations, etc. But there are also ideological aspects, such as dealing with the big questions in life, such as who are we? What is true? Where did we come from? Where do we find meaning? And most important, how do we live our lives? While we all want freedom of conscience and want to learn diverse viewpoints, we also know that beliefs matter, and there are some better than others, and so we are caught in a dilemma of where to budget our time and efforts so that we focus on what is really important to us. All religions, all congregations, all ministers tend to have focus as well. Unitarians traditionally focus on reason and religion as their brand. In recent years, the focus has shifted dramatically to a focus on radical pluralism. Today, we will try to understand why this occurred and what are its consequences. Keep in mind that UUA congregations are very diverse. If you've seen one, well, you've seen one. There are total New Age congregations with crystal healing services and chakra energy readings in their services. There are total Christian congregations. 20 of the 120 Unitarian congregations, UUA congregations in Massachusetts are joint UCC UUA congregations, but Christianity is totally dominant in them. There are humanist congregations where there is no traditional religious language that people are forced to retranslate under the language of reverence. Still, most people in surveys say they belong to the UUA to be with like-minded people, have intellectual stimulation, and most importantly, to belong to a supportive community. Being in a diverse group is actually way down the list of priorities in all UUA surveys. I'm going to try and stick to the facts today, but just so you're aware, I may touch on some of your sacred cows, but as Abby Hoffman says, sacred cows make the tastiest hamburger. Again, I'll ask you that personal question. Why are you here? I'll assume that you're here trying to understand what the good life is, and you're trying to build about it for yourself and others. Sometimes we just go along to get along, though, and we really don't plan a path for our congregations. Stuff happens, and we just go along for the ride. There are many ways to lead the good life. There are many good ways for congregations, but whatever path we choose for our congregation or ourselves, there are consequences. And because of this, I think it is important to plan and direct who we want to be. Let's review some quick history to learn what happened in the UUA. The Enlightenment was built on the philosophers in France primarily, Voltaire, Rousseau, Condorcet, Diderot, and all of them were deist atheists, but they had no alternative story. Unitarians have been traditionally focused on reason in religion, especially after William Ellery Channing's Baltimore sermon. Every historical record I could find says that Unitarianism historically focused on rational religion. Yes, we have freedom of conscience, but that is only a tool in our larger concerns finding the truth primarily through reason. Everything changed, though, in 1859 with the publication of The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. Now we had an alternative scientific story of our origin, meaning, and purpose. The Free Religious Association was a group organized in the latter part of the 19th century by such figures as Ralph Waldo Emerson and Charles Potter, and they embraced Darwinian theory and were loudly castigated by the theists in the Unitarian Association. The Western Conference was another group, more important group. That was a group of Midwestern ministers whose scientific approach and uncompromised atheism almost led to a schism in the Unitarian Association. It was narrowly averted in 1896 when the Unitarian Assembly changed its then Christian creedal purpose and seriously instituted the law of polity, whereby each congregation was its own authority. In the beginning of the 20th century, many of the Midwestern ministers in the Western Conference were preaching a bold, unapologetic non-theism. Unitarian minister John Dietrich was bringing in as many as 5,000 people in then backwater Minnesota, Minneapolis, to hear what he called humanism. And that name quickly spread and was embraced by other Unitarian ministers in the Midwestern Conference. In 1933, many were very concerned, and I've talked to people who wrote the Humanist Manifesto 1, that that civilization was possibly collapsing. And they wanted to put on paper what the best of civilization has told us. So they wrote Humanist Manifesto 1, a one-page summary of our progressive, naturalistic life stance. Hopefully you will have a chance to look at Humanist Manifesto 3, the latest affirmations of our evolving, I underline evolving, integrated whole world view. Truth is never sealed for us. In 1963, the UUA report, The Free Church in a Changing World, indeed found the identity of the UUA was so dominated by humanism that we should openly identify ourselves as such and build on identification with reason and science. In 1989, even then, fully 73% of UUs identified as humanist atheists. Today, it is estimated to have declined below 40%. Most of the UUA, frankly, have no idea what humanism is really. Still, the vast majority of membership today is certainly humanistic, that is people-centered, if not actually self-identified as naturalistic humanists. Focusing on humanism in the 50s and 60s, the UUA became the fastest growing denomination in America, believe it or not, peaking in 1968 at 177,431 members. By 2012, the membership had diminished to 161,502 members. More importantly, while the population of the United States grew 54% during this period, the UUA lost not just membership, but a percentage of market share of the population went down more rapidly from 0.088% to 0.51%. That is a 42% drop in market share. The UUA has lost membership in the last 4 years and now declines to give membership statistics. But these are sobering statistics. What happened? It was a perfect storm of a number of factors in the last quarter of the last century. The merger in 1961 with the Universalists was particularly transformative. Towards the end of their decline, the Universalists, trying to attract word people, changed their focus from universal salvation to embracing everyone universally, regardless of belief. It dropped even more rapidly, and that's why they had a fire sale to the Unitarians. The Unitarians, though, in an attempt to be welcoming to the new Universalists, adopted the focus on indiscriminate pluralism and slowly rejected the focus of using reason in religion. A neo-romantic age came about where reason was disparaged. The emotional and the experiential were exalted. Third-wave feminist Susan Jacoby calls it the age of unreason, the title of her book. Belief in the paranormal during this period grew 4 to 5-fold in the last quarter of the century. Also, New Age ideas offered spiritualism, belief in psychics, astrology, crystal healing, and other paranormals, and they all grew rapidly. Carl Sagan said then that science was a candle in the dark. Another growth was the factor of postmodernism in academia. Postmodern is a radical form of relativism and subjectivism. It says that all we know is a social construction primarily influenced by power and control. And both the Enlightenment and the Romantic projects are disparaged. Sadly, many academic second-wave feminists also bought into postmodernism. Meanwhile, liberal theological schools trying to get over their decline embrace process theology, where God is redefined as part of all the processes in the universe. We also see the God of the gaps, but this becomes increasingly untenable as we learn more and more about the universe. Theism desperately tries to hold on to some notion of God, even as being an energy in the universe. The religious redefinition game changes the definitions constantly to meet the current needs. President William Sinkford called for a language of reverence, which really ends up being nothing more than Protestant Christian language. We used to attract the best and the brightest to the ministry, but now with the collapse of the Unitarian theological seminaries, 64 to 70% of our ministers come from other denominations. No schooling in humanism or critical thinking is required to be a Unitarian minister. You can come in from a Baptist congregation and it's assumed that you have the parishional skills, the knowledge about religion in general, and with a few courses on Unitarian history, you can become a Unitarian minister. Many people enter the UUA when children start asking questions. Parents want a liberal community for their children that nurtures, educates them, and lets the children know they are not alone in their beliefs. But we don't provide an evocative grounding for them. Harding Carter is famously quoted as saying, "There are only two lasting legends and bequests we can give and hope to give our children. One of those is roots, the other is wings." The UUA does great on the wings, but children are left to fly directionless, which is possibly why the UUA has the lowest retention rate of any denomination for children at only 12%. UUA leadership has not been sympathetic to humanism in recent years. Forrester Church and John Behrens, in the first edition of their very popular book, A Common Faith, said, "Even as the Humanist Manifesto was being drafted in Nazi Germany, the sponsors of another vital movement in the direction of a candid and explicit humanism were beginning to spin a web of horror that would ensnare, desecrate, and massacre life in the most blasphemous way, genocide." Now, I don't know about you, but it's hard to think of a more demonizing statement than to compare humanism with the genocide of the Holocaust. After I and other humanists challenged them on these statements, they reluctantly, I underline, withdrew that in later editions. As I mentioned, President William Sinkford, embraced the religious redefinition game, calling it the language of reverence. The problem is that it marginalizes humanist atheists and makes us disappear, and it's not neutral. More recently, President Morales has thrown humanists under the bus by realigning with the Boy Scouts after 17 years. The Boy Scouts still require scouts and leaders to write and sign an oath saying they believe in God, so now we have no leverage to change their policies. The result of all of this is the UUA chose the Universalist focus towards radical pluralism and is now dominated by a fuzzy theism using metaphoric God language more than a Christian church in some cases. My local UU church, there literally is more God talk there than the big mega church down the street. Reason and religion has largely been abandoned. Meanwhile, though, the world isn't standing still. The secular revolution is going on and exponentially expanding. I attended the Reason rally in Washington 4 years ago with about 25 to 35,000 others. About 70% of those attending were under 35 and with a wide range of gender and race demographics. On June 4th, another reason rally will be held at the Washington Mall, and the numbers I predict will be shocking. There is little doubt that the USA and the developed world are moving rapidly to secular societies. The secular revolution is going almost exponential, with 22.8% now saying they are religious nuns today, and 20% saying they don't believe in God. The secular tide is moving in. More striking, though, fully 33% of millennials now say they are religious nuns. In Europe, the revolution has already occurred. And in Europe, the joke is people only go to church now in Europe 3 times in their lives. And 2 of those they're carried in. Matching, batching, and dispatching. It's leaving a lot of religious boats high and dry. Most of the mainline churches have lost upwards of 40% of their members in the last 10 years. The UUA does not have to follow the mainline church's decline, but can regain its vigor if it again becomes progressive, balanced, provides significance to people's lives, and moves away from a rightward theological position. While the UUA has embraced indiscriminate pluralism, there is another conception of pluralism espoused by the late philosopher Isaiah Berlin, who is one of my great heroes, who actually coined the word pluralism. We have multiple high values, he says, and all of those, though, are in radical, unavoidable conflict. All have trade-offs. There is no rational way to decide between them, and all of our great liberal values, our high liberal values, including the 3 pillars of liberalism, reason, freedom, and tolerance, are in radical, irresolvable conflict. Life abounds in radical choice between rival goods and evils, where reason leaves us in the lurch, and whatever is done involves irreparable loss and sometimes tragedy. Berlin's is a tragic liberalism, and I love that word he uses, a tragic liberalism. It is tragic in some ways. We want things to be simple and pure, but they're not. It's a tragic liberalism of unavoidable conflict, trade-offs, and irreparable loss amongst inherently competing high values. But though when we place one value over the others, it becomes ideology, and we can build a secular God, even of tolerance. Today, the UUA has raised radical tolerance over all the other values, including reason, truth, and whatever works to ennoble our lives. The focus on reason and religion is virtually gone. Talk of truth or religious foundations is virtually gone, and only the functional aspects of religion as therapeutic community remain. Most will tell you community is the major and sometimes the only reason they belong. But if religion is an attempt to answer the big questions of life, where did we come from? What is true? If a religion is an attempt to answer the big questions of life, where did we come from? Where do we go? What is true? How do we live? What happens when we die? What is ethical? Then Unitarian Universalism, ironically, has become a religion devoid of religion. This anythingism in the UUA has created a God of indiscriminate pluralism. Does it work? Not really by the membership declines. By moving to the theological right, abandoning the search for truth, and the religious redefinition game, they've increasingly made humanists in the UUA uncomfortable, and is reflected in the decline in numbers. Many are calling for even more radical diversity and pluralism, even to the point of some at the last General Assembly calling to attract more conservatives and evangelicals. It is a grave mistake. For many younger people, we look increasingly dated and conservative. What we have learned from the UUA experience can help us grow again. First, once you lose your focus, your market brand, it's hard to regain it. Trying to be all things to all people, it just doesn't work. People want their religion narrowly focused and meaningful. Every study puts being with like-minded people as the main reason people want to be together, not to be with people vastly different from them. Secondly, postmodernism's poisonous ideology of radical relativism undermines all of progressive liberalism. We may not have certainty, but science provides us with tools to explain, make predictions, and control the world. Science is true because it works, despite the fact that it gives us knowledge that is fallible, tentative, and probabilistic. Thirdly, always keep a balance of our highest values and don't let any of them become a secular God. Tolerance, reason, freedom, justice, love, compassion, these are all great values, but never let them overwhelm all the others. Fourth, be careful with words. Words have the power to create meanings or to destroy them. I think it is more than time to withdraw from the religious redefinition game. While many think the language of reverence is inclusive, it decidedly is not for the vast majority of humanists. Millennials in particular have a great distaste for dated religious redefinition game. It decidedly favors the theistic point of view. There is an ethics of words. Say what you mean and just mean what you say. I originally asked you why you're here. I think you and I are here because we want a better world. And also, we have a wholeness hunger that seeks higher answers to life. Our hearts long for an integrated whole view of life that matches with reality. We long for a vital center to our lives that both grounds and inspires us, a vision of grander authenticity and not just smaller truths. All of us long for a evocative whole story and a higher vision that lifts our hearts, moves our society forward, and pushes us to higher meanings and also ennobles our lives. Some may find that integrated story is already there in the balanced humanist secular life of here and now, of heart and mind, reason and compassion, and accepting the exhilarating challenge of moving forward towards a responsible search for truth and meaning. The humanist life stance is based on values, not our beliefs. We're open-minded critical thinking, science, justice, freedom, tolerance, democracy, compassion, human rights, inherent worth and dignity, and human flourishing hold our whole web of belief together. We cannot afford the luxury of embracing all religions or, on the other hand, just critiquing religion. We must tell our alternate story for those that contemplate change, know there is an alternate worldview that can support, inspire, and comfort them. That the knowledge of science, while tentative, is surely firmer than blind faith. That the exhilaration of focusing on the here and now is more meaningful than otherworldliness. That hope and love are certainly better than hate and divisiveness. That compassion and responsibility can be balanced with self-interest and freedom. The ambiguity that is inherent in all of our value, ethical, political choices we spoke of earlier need not paralyze us, but it makes it even more important we reflectively consider all our choices. Humanist ethics gains its power from affirming the inherent worth and dignity of all people and realizes if justice is to be given, only we can give it. If love is to be given, only we have the power in this moment, in this hour. And not doing so, that opportunity is lost forever. Suffering not relieved is real suffering, not washed away by the hand of a loving God when we die. This world is all and enough to fill us with joy and hope and wonder and awe, and that is our natural birthright. Now is our time and our chance to move society towards reason and the good life. Now is our time to move society out of the dark ages of theocratic and ideological control towards human fulfillment. We cannot falter in the face of certain hostility, our own inherent ambiguity, and we cannot idly stand by hoping for a secular society or even a UUA to automatically shape itself. It is our duty to show that a secular world need not end in nihilism, but that we can build communities that embrace a progressive, humanist, ethical worldview of human and global good. And I thank you.